And here we are again in my little cottage in Stratford-on-Avon. I've got all the names of all the people who contributed to my little question, really. I asked who of all the people that I have worked with you would most like to invite to dinner with me. So in other words, if you were going to have a dinner party and you were going to invite Sarah Douglas, whom would you choose of all the people I've worked with? Well, of course, you all say Christopher Reeve, you all say Marlon Brando and Arnold Schwarzenegger. But what I loved was the odd offbeat people that you came up with. You had lots and lots and lots of different names, which is great, and all the obvious. But the ones that I really enjoyed reading were the unlikely ones. Names that I had perhaps not remembered too well. Actors that I hadn't really got to know. I mean, an example is Ina Scriver. And she was in Space 1999 with me. She was Danish. I don't remember much about it because I can remember being deeply embarrassed because I was supposed to be naked. Now you are, you're all rushing for your Space 1999 DVDs now, aren't you? But I was wearing a body stocking, and I also had a very, very, very long wig, which was suitably stuck to different parts of my body so that if I moved I wasn't going to reveal anything. And so when I saw her name I went and looked up and read about her and see that she still lives in England and hopefully she's doing well. I don't know that I even got a chance to get to know her. I was, Space 1999 now, it was a very exciting thing for me. I was a young actress and it was one of my very, very first science fiction space things that I did, of a whole long list of them. But I can remember being very excited to be there. And Martin Landau and his wife, it was great fun. So that was a good one. I was very intrigued that somebody would think of that. But I've got one or two others. Brad Stengel, well, you, along with a lot of other people, mentioned David Warner. Well, of course, David Warner, without doubt, one of our finest Shakespearean actors, and sadly is no longer with us, but I first met him when I was in my very, very early teens, and he was here in Stratford-on-Avon. I think the plays were The War of the Roses, but I remember meeting him because my mum, who you'll remember, was a physiotherapist, and she worked for the theatre, and so she had David as a patient. And I can even remember him coming to the house for some reason in his doublet and hose. There was some emergency. I think he was about to go on stage or something had happened, but he was in his costume. And I was very, very excited to meet him. And he was a young man then, and for me it was just too wonderful for words. He also lived across the road from me, so I would peep out of my bedroom window and watch some of the goings on. I think he had a few parties, as well he should. And I was aspiring to be an actress, so it was great to finally work with him. And he was in his doublet and hose again. So David Warner, that was a good one. I'd love to have had the opportunity to have sat at a dinner with him. And of course I did a few audio things with him as well, which was brilliant. And I remember saying to him, gosh, you're doing audios, you're doing these radio shows and audio books, and I was sort of slightly amazed that he would even find the time to go off and do an audio. And he said, of course, he said, and I have mortgages to pay and ex-wives and the rest of it. And I thought, well, of course, yes, of course you do. We all need to work, don't we? Which possibly explains some of the turkeys that I've done, or not, as the case may be. James Barnes, of course, gets a big tick from me because he gave a big shout out to Eli for the video and for all the hard work that he does. Oh, he also mentions Ina Scriver, again from Space 1999. Gosh, it's very popular. Oh, he would like me to bring Pierce Brosnan along. Well, that would be very nice. I had a few dinners with Pierce Brosnan when I was shooting Remington Steele, and he is just about the most gorgeous man in the whole wide world. And I had a brilliant time doing Remington Steele, as you probably remember, and I laughed and laughed and laughed, and it's great. Anyway, incidentally, this is a list of the ones that I have chosen out of all the many, many, many that you sent me, which is very sweet of you to even trouble, but I couldn't, obviously I can't do them all. Blaine Jensen, David Prowse and Shane Rimmer. Sadly, neither of them with us any longer. Shane, my goodness, from the people that time forgot. And I knew Shane really quite well, socially, outside of acting, and he was great fun, and the people that time forgot, of course, we would have lots and lots to talk about, especially all the adventures we got to in the Canary Islands, because Dana Gillespie, who also got mentioned as somebody that people would like me to have dinner with, Dana and I, with Doug McClaw and Shane, we all would have some wonderful evenings. There were very few females, for some reason, on this particular island. So Dana and I were very spoilt, and the gentlemen were an absolute delight. And Shane was an absolute gentleman. And of course Dave Prowse, you all know Dave Prowse. I mean, I've met Dave over the years in different shows we've worked on, and of course at all the conventions, and he was full of stories and for me, my main thing was that he was the Green Cross Code Man. Now, you in America might not even know what I'm talking about, but my English friends and fans would certainly know the Green Cross Code Man. I can see him now in all the gear, telling us all to look left, look right, look left again. Have I mentioned Luke Holbrook? Julian Glover, he mentioned. Of course, the Brute, or the Brutal Syndrome. Yes, when we meet up, we still have lots of stories to talk about because it was, for me, very, very, very stressful because it was about a battered wife and there was a lot of battering going on during the show, and it was, it was quite traumatic, the whole thing, and I was on screen a great deal. It was an enormous opportunity for me in my early days as an actress, so it gave me a good bit of screen time. Julian, of course, was wonderful to work with and continues to be wonderful. And a bit cheeky, but he knows what I mean. We had a lot of laughs on that, so that's a good memory, so thank you for that. Now, this person has come up with a whole list of people for me to have dinner with. Jo Vaughan, how brilliant. She suggests Courtney Hope. Susan Blakely. Susie Blakely is a good dear friend and I love her dearly and have lots of dinners with her, and I will always go and have another dinner with her. Alfred Molina. Well, Alfred Molina. I wonder if you Americans, you should know who Alfred Molina is, because in about every single show that there is in America, he does every single accent there is. He and I met possibly when I was about 15, 16, no older, and we shared a flat in London when I was in the National Youth Theatre, and we had many an evening. We were all sort of kind of like students, we weren't students, but it was a semi-professional company, and there we were looking after ourselves. And Alfred, I'm delighted to say, I then got to know again a little bit in America when I was living there and he was living there, and he's still there now, so that was a nice one. She also mentions Martin Landau, Olivia Hussey, Glynis Johns. I've forgotten Glynis Johns. Oh, that would have been brilliant, wouldn't it? Glynis Johns. Angela Lansbury. Well, of course, Angela Lansbury was just so marvellous, had such tales to tell. So if you invited us to dinner, you can be sure you wouldn't get a word in edgeways, and we wouldn't anyway. Somebody else also mentioned Jane Wyman, and I have to say, having been on location, when I was doing Falcon Crest, I was on location in the Napa Valley, and there was many an opportunity to sit in the evenings and talk with her, and she was of the old school. She was like old Hollywood. Fascinating to me to hear about how Hollywood used to be. She, of course, had been married to the president once upon a time, and that was something you did not mention. So if we were to recreate this, and you were to manage to bring Jane Wyman back to life and bring her to dinner with me, don't mention the president, because it's out of bounds. Boy, that's going to be some evening, isn't it? We're all going to get together. And right at the very end, she says, just like that, it turns out to be a summer garden party, but the main guest would have to be your mum. Well, Jo, that really knocked me for six, that one, because you're absolutely right. My mum was the very best of people to have at a dinner party, because she had stories. Forget my stories, her stories were phenomenal. Back in the day of the theatre, back in the days of Laurence Olivier and Charles Laughton, and just extraordinary stories. So much so that once upon a time, our big national newspaper, the Daily Mail, approached her and asked if she could tell some stories about some of the famous bottoms that she had rubbed. She was a physiotherapist, I hasten to add, and she was very indignant and very put out because she certainly wouldn't be telling any of those stories. But you know what? If we went over to Jo's house, I think we could persuade her to share some of those wonderful moments. Anyway, thank you, Jo, for that. That was great. And thank all of you for taking the time and the effort to think about this and giving me an opportunity to revisit and have a look and think about all these lovely people. I hope next time I see you, I'll have something really exciting to say. And if I don't, I shall just waffle on like I do. So, here is my busy bee jar. As you know, the whole point about this is that I've got that Ursa card with the kisses, so I said whoever gets this pulled out, I shall write them a little note and send them a card. So, here we are. Oh, I need my glasses. Jo Vaughan. See? You were right, Jo. Mum's looking down. She wants you to win. She wants to come over for dinner. Thank you. And thank you, Jo, and thank you, all of you, for taking the trouble.